I suppose as CEO of this new organisation, it's only up and running 4 weeks, but I suppose the office has been in place, albeit under a different department, for some time. So when exactly was it established?
1st of January is the date of establishment.
No, before that, when there was the office was under the.
It was a division.
Deeper,
it was a division
yeah.
within Deeper. Correct.
So explain to me what that division was. How was that separate from what your office is?
Why the separation took place, if you can.
Okay, Deputy. In 2012, the shared services strategy and plan was developed in 2012, and it went from a very small project team in 2013 when the operation started to deliver services in Clonskea in Dublin, and the staff numbers started to grow. And then when payroll services commenced, they commenced at the end of 2014, and as we expanded the service offering to new departments, the numbers of staff working in shared services increased and increased, to the extent that shared services is a specialism, and it requires clear accountability for all of the people that receive the services and the departments we serve. It requires clear funding arrangements, but it also requires a very strong customer focus and a continuous improvement focus on operations and technology. And that is different to the business of the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, which is primarily a policy department. So my office is now more than twice the size of the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform. And so we always envisaged, once the shared service centres got up and running, that there was not much synergy and it didn't make sense to stay. We're the administration office.
I understand that. Yeah. So what I'm just trying to be clear on is that there was a shared services strategy plan in 2012.
Developed.
There was then a division that was established when exactly? Was that in 2012?
2014 on
2014,
an
the division
basis.
That was to take payroll, to deal with payroll.
No, that was where everything under the shared services vote, because we set up a vote in 2014.
I understand that. So
yeah.
2012 was a plan. 2014 you have a division, and now we have a separate office, not under Deeper, which you are the accounting officer.
Correct.
Which is 4 weeks up and running.
Correct.
But when Mr. Robert Watt announced the shared services strategy plan, this is the Secretary General of the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, he said that there would be €50 million savings. So do you have the breakdown then from 2012, when we went from a plan, to 2014 where we had a division, to now? How much exactly has been saved for the taxpayer since the plan started to be put in action, year on year, from 2012 up to now? Would you have that breakdown?
We have a breakdown, and I can provide that to you.
You could give us the headline figures
further,
if you
but
could.
The headline figure of the savings to date, the savings arise when the service is up and running, and when the staff transfer to me to carry out the work, or when staff who used to do that work are redeployed to other, or the technology costs are reduced as a result of my
I understand.
office.
I'm just looking for the figures for the moment. If you
So the savings estimated at this time, given that we've just concluded all of the migrations, the savings estimated at this stage for HR and payroll is 21 million.
And where did that figure come from?
The savings has arisen from...
No, the €21 million. Who came to the figure of 21 million, that there was 21 million saved? Is that a Deeper figure, or was it your own figures, or does it come from somewhere else?
It's an analysis that was carried out when my office was part of Deeper, but it was carried out by the HR policy unit in Deeper, looking at what the cost of the pay bill of staff carrying out the work of shared services is. So
Deeper, so there was a unit within Deeper which came to the figure of 21 million.
No, they did it on an annual basis.
And who did it was it in-house or was it external?
It was probably a combination, but I'd have to let the department. In fairness, Deputy, I'm starting to get into territory that I feel I'm not really comfortable. I would probably need to come back and give you some clarity on that in writing if I can.
Okay, well, there's no need to be uncomfortable, because this was announced with great fanfare. Nobody disagrees with the concept and the logic of having shared services offices and streamlining and professionalising services. We were told a €50 million savings figure would be achieved. I'm trying to understand how much was saved up to now. You're saying 21 million, and I'm just asking, well, where did that figure come from? So there's no need to be uncomfortable. They're very straightforward questions.
A steeper has come up with the 21 million, not your office.
I'm reporting it on the basis of annual savings made, and I've added up over the 4 years when the HR operations have been live and the payroll has been live, and that number comes to a total of 21 million. You can't make the savings until the centres are fully established and the people who used to do the work and the technology spend that used to be associated with the work goes away. So it's a matter of timing, Deputy.
You're quoted in the newspaper report, Ms Murphy-Fagan, in December 2015, and I'm quoting from you, savings in the civil service alone comes to €34 million a year.
Savings in the civil service, and then there were also savings across sectors as well, I think, in
so
the
how is that
Deputy.
different? Why is, earlier on I asked for the saving and it was 21 million. Where did the €34 million
Finance hasn't yet commenced services.
So it hasn't been, the €34 million hasn't been achieved yet, that saving. It's an estimate.
It's too early, yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. But I have no reason to believe that we're on track to achieve what we had intended to.
And was there a Deloitte report that would have underpinned some of those figures? Or did this come from deeper alone?
No, in each situation, in each separate shared service, a detailed business case was developed, and the detailed business case looked at what is the current cost of administration, and if it moved to a shared service centre, what would be the savings made. Those business cases and feasibility in business cases were carried out by DEEPR, but with the assistance of third parties such as
I understand that, Ms Murphy-Fagan, but what we had in 2012 was a statement from the then accounting officer that there would be a €50 million saving. In December 2015, you said there would be a €34 million a year saving. It's now 21 million, although it's still more work to be done and finance has to be transferred as well, so I understand that. But obviously, we have a job to do to understand, first of all, how effective the office will be, exactly how much is being saved, are we getting value for money, and I just have a question then in terms of staff numbers. So how many staff members are there? Is it 700 and something, I think? Is it
770 at the end of 2017.
And were all of those people seconded from different services, different departments, or did you have to recruit? And
some were external recruitment, and some were civil servants who transferred or who applied or got promoted into my office.
So we have more civil servants then?
We have more civil servants carrying out this work, and the people who used to do that work in those departments either are now working for me, some of them came across if they wanted to work with me, or some of those staff who used to carry out that work are doing different work.
I would have imagined that if we were looking at saving money and if we were streamlining services, we would have less staff and not more staff. So what I see is that we set up a new unit, we have more staff, we have more costs. I'm trying to establish then how we save money and all of that. I'm assuming from what you're saying is that there may have been people in the line departments who in the past were responsible for payroll or HR who are now maybe reassigned other duties. Is that essentially what happened?
Deputy, the numbers of staff carrying out the work in my office are less than the numbers of staff who used to carry out that work when it was done by all of the individual bodies. That's where the savings arise. So in total, I have less staff. But there's
more civil servants in the system. That's the point. You had to take on more civil servants. You had to take on more staff to work in your office. Those then who were in the past doing the work that they were doing, maybe doing something else. My point is there are still more civil servants. And in that scenario, then how are we achieving a saving?
We've less staff carrying out the work that my office does than previously. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the grades of staff carrying out the work is aligned to what the organisation needs. So we have the right level of staff with the right skills and capabilities carrying out the work in my office.
Okay, I have a report. This is the report that I have here, the Light Report, which is an examination of shared services in the Irish Public Service and internationally. And it's actually this report that cites where money could be saved and how much would be saved, which is why I asked was there the Light Report. So who would have commissioned that report? Was that a deeper commissioned report, or did it?
That's correct. Yeah.
And did they hold or host a conference on the issue of saved shared services around that time or shortly afterwards?
No.
Did you personally speak at a Delight conference or an event on shared services?
The Department of Public Expenditure and Reform held its first shared service conference for the public service in November last year. That was the first public service shared service conference it has
conference
had.
at any time, a Delight event on shared services?
There are events on shared services because it's...
Did you speak at any event organised by Delight?
I spoke at an event in Vienna with other countries on shared
hosted
services.
the event?
The event was... I can't recall, Deputy. I'll have to come back to you. I can't
okay, if you
recall
can
who
come back to us
hosted
on
it.
that. And can I just bring your attention as well to a report by the Controller and Auditor General's Office in Britain, and in fact a report from the Home Office as well, because they've gone down this road. In fact, in the same article that I referenced earlier in December 2015, you said that Ireland was behind the curve when it comes to shared services. First of all, you might just explain to us what you meant by behind the curve before I get to these two reports from the UK.
Well, I think the OECD carried out a report in 2008 on Ireland, and its recommendation was for the expansion and the acceleration of shared services in Ireland in the Irish Public Service, that relative to other countries, Ireland was behind the curve. That was in the OECD report.
Like how exactly were we behind the curve?
In terms of the utilisation and the establishment of shared services.
Yeah.
That was the OECD report.
And you used the terminology in your own opening statement of the modernisation of corporate administration and professionalism. I don't have a difficulty with the use of the word corporate, but it does suggest maybe something that is not normally used in the world of public service. And I'm looking then at what happened in Britain, because essentially what happened is that the services were put into a shared service office. It was to centralise and put into a single office HR, payroll, all of those type of services, and then it was outsourced, and it was essentially privatised because it became profitable to do it then, because it was, once you set up a unit like that, once you have shared services, once you do what you say you want to do, which is to modernise the modernisation of corporate administration, the logical next step for some would be, well, let's outsource and let's privatise. Would that be something that could be envisaged in this state as well? If we follow the logic of what happened in Britain, so I'm trying to understand when you say we're behind the curve, and I'm looking at what's happened in most European countries where these services offices were set up. Almost all of them were outsourced in time.
If my comment is there, it's around the use of shared service models. I wasn't actually referring to outsourcing at all. I suppose you're asking me to comment on a policy matter that at some point in time in the future that isn't necessarily within my own... I'm
asking you to comment at all. I'm just making an observation from my own perspective, which I think is an entirely logical one, that if this has happened in other European member states, and in fact there's one newspaper report which says government, SSCL and Arvata, which is the company that got the contract, are all to blame for shared services centres failing to achieve value for money. So far from achieving savings in Britain, in fact it cost them more eventually, and they privatised. The reason why I raised this with yourself, Cathaoirleach, is it is a matter for policy makers. Obviously it is a matter for the Minister, so I'm not going to put Miss Murphy-Fagan in the position to comment on policy. But we've come through a number of Public Accounts Committee meetings. It is a matter for policy makers. Obviously it is a matter for the Minister, so I'm not going to put Miss Murphy-Fagan in the position to comment on policy. But we've come through a number of Public Accounts Committee meetings where, because services have been outsourced and there's an arm's length then between us as people who hold those who spend taxpayers' money to account, and accounting officers. The accounting officers will tell us that there's a service level agreement. That's whoever the accounting officer could be if it was privatised at some point.
Well, particularly happy that this has not been outsourced. It's a new, totally handled by the public service.
You would understand my suspicions down the road. It could potentially happen. But obviously that's not for you, Ms. Murphy-Fagan. I'm just making an observation. But I think it's a relevant one given what's happened elsewhere.